American Football Stories is brought to you by Coach Paint. Coach Paint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips similar to the graphics you see on TV. Coach Paint offers the ability to clearly tellustrate video while increasing retention of information in a shorter amount of time. Up your game with Coach Paint today.
What time is it? Game time! It's gonna be special. They gonna talk about this forever.
Welcome to American Football Stories.
Puts his head down, crashes and spins, and dives. Touchdown!
Bringing together the many perspectives that make up college football in the NFL.
Football is one of the greatest sports ever invented.
From players and coaches.
Believe, baby, believe, baby.
Hey, we playing to win right here, fellas.
To the front office and scouts.
The public is finally beginning to catch up, but they don't even know half the truth.
Us against the world, let's get it.
Your hosts, Robert Parker and Nick Knudsen, bring you American Football Stories.
Welcome to the American Football Stories podcast brought to you by Coach Paint. Today is January 4th, 2021. I'm your host, Nick Knudsen, with my co-host, Robert Parker. Week 17 of the NFL has concluded, and we'll go over each and every one of those games, just like we have every single week this season. Rob, it's always bittersweet when you reach the end of the season. It's always hard to believe it's been 17 weeks too. But on the other hand, we got some great playoff matchups coming our way next week.
Yeah, we really do. And I tell you what, it kind of seems like the 17-week season kind of flew by for some reason. I don't know. Was it because of the, all the outside stuff dealing with the pandemic and COVID? But I tell you what, 17 weeks, it really seemed like it flew by.
Good on the NFL for getting it done too. No bubble, nothing. We definitely had some weird situations with the Broncos and everything. That one game where they didn't have a quarterback, but relatively normal season of football, minus obviously the fans and everything else. But pretty strange times overall. But football helped us get through it. I'll tell you what. The last 3 months have certainly went faster than the first the 6 months prior than that. I'll tell you that. It was nice having football as a distraction every single week during these times. But let's start out in Buffalo, where my understanding is the state of New York is going to open up Buffalo for a playoff game. They're going to be able to get some fans in there for the playoff game. That's great. But the Bills, they ruined the Dolphins' playoff hopes. They crushed Miami 56-26, despite resting a lot of their starters in the second half. Tua threw for 361 yards, but those numbers were completely inflated. A lot of those numbers came when the game was out of hand, and Buffalo just looked spectacular. They're up 28-6 at halftime in this game, and really never really gave Miami a chance.
I think this Buffalo team is kind of hitting his stride at the right time, especially going into the playoffs. And the way that Josh Allen's been playing this year, he's really making that jump from last year to this year, and he's putting his name in there as being, one of the better quarterbacks in the AFC. So if he can kind of continue on in this trajectory, I think the Bills team moving forward is going to be, kind of hard out in the playoffs. So, but I think the story of this particular game was, Tua. I know, the back and forth between him and Ryan Fitzpatrick coming in the game, it really seemed like he didn't have it today. And yesterday. So with that being said, moving forward, Nick, I know the Dolphins have a top 5 draft pick. Do you see the Dolphins drafting a quarterback?
Man, that would be something to talk about, but I don't think so, man. I think you're okay with Tua. Tua got thrown in there midseason. He's still finding his way. I actually think Tua had a successful rookie campaign. I think having Fitzpatrick there definitely maybe not so much hinders the wrong word, but like in Cincinnati, you never had to worry about a veteran staring over Joe Burrow's shoulder, right? So like in Miami, when you got a veteran quarterback like Fitzpatrick, who's playing pretty well overall, at times. Yeah, it's kind of tough sometimes for Tua, like where the coach feels more comfortable sometimes going with the vet. But that goes back to your question at midseason. Why put him in the first place if you're not going to trust him? So it was a little bit weird the way Miami handled it, but at the same time, difficult loss for Miami on this day, but you got to be incredibly optimistic heading into the future with this franchise. I think like what a turnaround from 2019 to 2020. It's really a shame that they're not going to get to go to the playoffs this year because I thought Miami was one of the more interesting stories in football. Just unfortunately, the loss that really killed them, that I was really crushed them for, was that Denver loss. Last month when they went to Denver. That's a game you can't lose those games. Like I mean, and lesson learned for the playoffs, you got to win the games that you're expected to win if you're going to be a playoff team.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, to follow up with that, do you think the Dolphins will be in the playoffs if they never took the reins from Ryan Fitzpatrick at the quarterback position?
No,
So do you?
no, because Fitzpatrick is who he is, and it's almost better for Fitzpatrick's image to come in and play the hero role every once in a while. Because if Ryan Fitzpatrick plays a full season, we know he's going to look spectacular, and we know he's going to look terrible. He's got the full range. He's going to have, there's no one more capable of throwing 5 interceptions the game after they throw 5 touchdowns. And I love Fitzpatrick. He's become a very fun player to watch in this league because of the ups and downs, though. Like, I think he's been a little more consistent with Miami. And the thing with Fitzpatrick that always surprises you when you watch him is his mobility is much better than you think it is. He doesn't look like a guy who's mobile, but he definitely is. He gets around the field okay, especially for a vet. But I don't know. Fitzpatrick's just like a scrappy guy that you root for. Tua is definitely the future in Miami. And if I'm Miami, I'm investing that pick in Penei Sewell or someone like that. Like I'm going along the O line or some other need. Or if you're Miami, what do you desperately need right now? Could you trade down from that number 3 pick?
That's definitely a possibility to trade down to pick up more picks. Once again, I think this draft class is loaded, but at the end of the day, this is probably going to be one of the hardest draft class to analyze because of the COVID year and because of no off season really for college the players or training camp that the NFL just had. So I think it's really going to be a crapshoot this year, but it's definitely a lot of talented players out there coming into this year's draft.
Since you asked the question, you don't actually see Miami drafting a quarterback, do you?
It's a possibility, but me personally, I just don't see them doing it. The year before the whole tank for Tua, you kind of got the guy that you really, really wanted as an organization. So, why undermine all the hard work or not the hard work that you put in to kind of get Tua?
Yeah, I don't understand that. And if Justin Fields is sitting there at 3 and someone's going to want to pay the price to come up and get him, I'll tell you that. So, Miami's in great position. Love the way they're building. If I'm a fan of the Dolphins, I got a lot of trust in the organization for the first time in probably about 25 years. They're doing good things down there. Damn shame they couldn't make the playoffs though, because the AFC is just loaded this year. One of those teams that finished the season red hot were the Baltimore Ravens. We were worried a couple weeks ago. Wait, before I jump into Baltimore, I did mean to mention with Buffalo. We said at midseason that we didn't see this Bills team as being among the elite capable of making a Super Bowl run. I fully renounce that. I think Buffalo is fully in the hunt here, and they've been playing some of the best football in the league. I fully expect the Bills to make a run in the playoffs here.
Yeah, you're right about that. We talked about that earlier in the year on multiple pod episodes, and the reason why is because of the running game. But for some reason, it really seems like the Bills don't need a running game to be an elite team. And it just seems like the play of Josh Allen and this defense could carry this Bills team to have a Super Bowl run. So yeah. I think, we stress the run game a lot, but for some reason, it's an anomaly with this Bills team and it's working in their favor. So just like you said, this Bills team is definitely playing hot ball at the right time. And it's definitely an elite team within the whole scheme of things within the NFL and making a move to a Super Bowl title.
They got the offense to push the Chiefs. I would say they're probably the best candidate in the AFC to push the Chiefs on the offensive side of the ball, and they're going to open up at 1 o'clock on Saturday with the Colts. So in the playoffs. All right, but let's move on to Baltimore. Didn't mean to spend that much time in the Miami Buffalo game, but lots to talk about. Baltimore 38-3 over the Bengals. Poor Cincinnati. You lost Joe Burrow. Rough season for the Bengals after that point. They were one of the more interesting teams in football early on with Joe Burrow. Can't wait to see him back. Saw the video where he's already walking, but Cincinnati kind of threw in the towel after that. They did win a couple games without him, but pretty tough sledding for the Bengals here against the Ravens team that was hungry, needed the playoff spot. Lamar Jackson. Hey, look, these Ravens, what I like about them is they are who they are, and they know it. They're just going to do their thing. They're going to show up. They're going to play their game, and they're not going to try to do anything overly fancy. And to me, I wouldn't want to see them in the playoffs. They're going to open up with the Titans. I think that's a hell of a first-round game, the Ravens and the Titans. But Baltimore, when their backs were against the wall, they got it done. Good run by the Ravens to make the postseason here.
Yeah, definitely good run by the Ravens to make the postseason. And yesterday, it seems like it was a lot of records being broke, and Lamar Jackson actually broke one of those. The first quarterback to rush for 1,000 yards in 2 consecutive seasons. So that's pretty big. And just like you said, this Ravens team, they know who they are. They want to run the ball. They want to play defense, and it's been working for them. And just like you said, that's going to be a tough physical matchup going against the Titans. So I'm definitely ready to see that. And that's probably going to be one of my games that I circle on the schedule for this week in the playoffs to kind of really sit down and watch.
A preview of next week's playoff matchup. The Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Cleveland, followed the Browns 24-22. The Browns needed every bit to get this victory here. They finished 11-5 on the season, make their first playoff spot since 2002. I got that wrong on the podcast the other day. I said 2004 the other day. 2002. The Brownies. Here we go, Brownies. Finally in the playoffs again. But man, it was pretty ugly. They really let Pittsburgh have every opportunity possible to get back in the game, and you just wanted the Browns to. The Steelers didn't start a lot of their top players. Roethlisberger stayed home. I don't think Hayward. A lot of their top guys along the line. Watt wasn't playing, and the Steelers still pushed them to the brink. Definitely concerning, but you're 11-5. You make the playoffs if you're the Browns. It wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be at midseason because I figured 11-5, that's a shoo-in to get you into the playoffs. But with the AFC this year, it's just so loaded where I figured 10 wins. If you would have told me 10-6 was out of the playoffs, I would have been shocked with 7 teams at 10-6 can't make the playoffs. But 11-5 Cleveland does get the win. They sneak into the playoffs. They will play Pittsburgh next week in Pittsburgh, where they were slaughtered. I believe it was 38-7 earlier in the season by Big Ben and company. I don't have high hopes for the Browns next week in Pittsburgh, but good on Cleveland for making the playoffs. Kevin Stefanski, first season in Cleveland. That's huge progress there.
Great progress. I tell you what, it really seems like, this Browns team have something to build on, even if they're 1-0 in the playoffs, this coming weekend. But at the end of the day, it just seems like they're got the pieces that they need to kind of be a consistent playoff team year in and year out. And if Baker Mayfield can kind of improve, I don't see the reason why the Browns can't be one of those consistent teams that makes the playoff year in and year out. But good for the Browns and that organization, and better yet, good for the fans. So I'm just excited that the Browns are finally back in the playoffs.
It's going to be fun to watch next week. I hope they're at least competitive in that playoff game. That could do a lot for their confidence going forward as an organization. But they go to Heinz Field to play the Steelers, who was also their last playoff opponent, I believe, in 2002. 8:15 on Sunday night. It's gonna be Sunday Night Football next week. Brownies and Steelers. Let's go to the NFC North. The Vikings defeated the Lions 37-35. Lots of action in this game on the offensive side. Kirk Cousins goes for over 405 yards. Matt Stafford, is it his last game as a Lion? Adrian Peterson, is it his last game in the NFL? Detroit Lions are going to be going an entirely different direction as an organization. Of course, we saw they hired Chris Spielman, brother of Minnesota Vikings GM Rick Spielman, to really come in and help get their house in order. And I'm a big fan of Chris Spielman. I think that he's going to have a positive effect on the Lions organization, but um, I I think Detroit's in. I think we might have seen the last of Matt Stafford in a Detroit Lion uniform. I think they're going to be in for a complete overhaul and a rebuild in Detroit. But Rob, your Vikings team 7-9, pretty disappointing for this roster this season. Obviously, they had tough sledding out the gate that really set them back. This team definitely is better than the 7-9 record, I feel. But what's holding them back? I know the offense seems pretty reliant on. Cousins certainly has weeks like this where he goes off, but when they play elite competition, they need that running game. And Dalvin Cook, as good as he is, he's been injured a lot in his NFL career. Is he reliable enough to carry the torch for the Vikings? Do they need to get another guy in there who can help them move the ball? Like what's going on with Minnesota? I know. And by the way, I'm pointing my finger at Dalvin Cook like he's the problem. I'm talking about in terms of becoming an elite team here, competing with the Packers, winning NFC North titles. I obviously understand the defense was a huge issue in Minnesota this year.
Yeah, definitely the defense. But I tell you what, I'd definitely be remiss not to mention my guy Justin Jefferson for setting the all-time rookie receiving
Great
record.
season.
Great season. It really seems like they hit on Justin Jefferson in the draft with losing Stephon Diggs to a trade with the Buffalo Bills. So it seemed like it worked out for both teams. So moving forward, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen with, Dalvin Cook in the backfield and with the emergence of Irv Smith Jr. at the tight end position, I think, this Minnesota team is kind of set on the offense side of the ball. Yeah, they can kind of, beef up the offensive line and get more protection for Kirk Cousins. But just like you said, Nick, everything kind of falls on this defense. Daniil Hunter, he pretty much missed the whole season. So that was a big part in the Minnesota's defense. And then, when you have Anthony Barr, you have Hendricks going down to injuries, and then you have a young secondary back there. This is probably one of the, Mike Zimmer's worst defense that he ever put out on the field. And they were still competitive week in and week out. And they kind of gave a couple games away, and they still were in that playoff contention to make a wild card spot. So I think, Mike Zimmer and this Minnesota Vikings team moving forward is going to be okay. And I just think they just have to add a little bit more pieces on the defense side of the ball. So whether they do that through the draft or free agency, whatever the case may be, I think this Vikings team is definitely going to be back in the thick of things, being a consistent playoff team moving forward.
How about the Lions? Where do you see them going?
Yeah, just like you said, it's going to be a total rebuild for this Lions team. I mean, Matthew Stafford, is he coming back? Adrian Peterson, is this his last game, not only with the Detroit Lions, but is this his last game in the NFL? And then once again, you have Marvin Jones to come out and say, hey, I want to play for a contender. So you're losing, top of your three best weapons on the offense side of the ball, and your quarterback, your running back, and your receivers. So it's definitely going to be a total rebuild for this Detroit team moving forward. But once again, I have faith in Spielman moving forward that, he can kind of put something together. But I tell you what, they have to hit on a head coach. They that's one thing they must do, to have that consistency head coach in there that can kind of turn the ship around. So I think this Detroit team is definitely in rebuild mode.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And you know what? I think it's time. They've tried to give it a run. It's a damn shame that they really couldn't give Matt Stafford more support, and they only made the playoffs a few times with him, because you don't get quarterbacks like that very often. So, but on the other hand, it's always a big mystery. Like, Tom Brady's going to make the playoffs wherever he is. Why isn't that the same in Detroit? I don't understand. So I'm not sure if Matt Stafford, if he's definitely not going to guarantee you a playoff spot, but he's had injury issues himself, getting beat up behind some offensive lines in Detroit there. So tough time. Didn't really take advantage of a really good quarterback's career there, but might be time to move on if you're the Lions. Let's go out to the AFC East. New England gets over the Jets 28-14. The Jets finished the season 2-14. The Pats finished 7-9. Cam Newton had a solid game. Definitely made a case to stick around next year, but it was against the Jets, so let's take it with a grain of salt. However, these Jets were as feisty like they've been the last few weeks. They were 14-14 in the third quarter there. Rob, I don't have a lot to say about the direction of the Patriots here. I think Cam Newton, they're always a mystery, so it's kind of a waste of time to speculate on them a whole lot. from my understanding, there were reports yesterday saying Cam Newton's not looking like he'll be back next year for New England. The Jets are going to go in a completely different direction. After watching the Sugar Bowl the other day with Justin Fields, I know there's some Jets fans out there talking about keeping Darnold. I don't know how Justin Fields doesn't appeal to people, though. Like, what are you doing if you're the Jets?
Yeah, I think if you're the Jets, you kind of have to move on with Sam Darnold. I mean, you kind of fire Adam Gase. Everyone and their mother knew that was coming. So I think you kind of have to move on and you kind of have to rebuild this team. You definitely have pieces there. You have, Marcus May in the secondary. You have Quentin Williams, in the trenches. So you do have pieces. Jamison Crowder on the offense side of the ball. So you kind of have some pieces there to work with, but once again, you have to get that quarterback and that head coach in there to kind of build that continuity moving forward. But if you're Cam Newton in the Patriots, I saw the Patriots have a top 15 pick in this year's upcoming draft. So how can you not draft a quarterback? It really seems like, it's a lot of quarterbacks out there that the Patriots could draft and hit on. And I think that's one thing that the Patriots have to do to get that position solidified moving forward. And then, just like you said, we had a couple pods before we talked about all the opt-outs that the Patriots had on the defense side of the ball. So, you bring those guys back and you hit on the quarterback in the draft and you kind of get this thing rolling again. So I don't think the Patriots is that far off compared to their, rivals in the Jets in that particular division. So I think the Patriots are a little bit far along. I give Bill Belichick and that organization a little bit more credence than I give this Jets organization for getting it done. But you hit the nail on the head. How can you not take Justin Fields at the number 2 spot? Just seeing how he just pretty much, ramshacked that Clemson's defense. So I think the Jets should definitely move on from Sam Darnold and bring in Justin Fields.
Kyle Trask would look pretty good in a Patriots jersey.
Yeah, I mean, you have a ton of players that look good in a Patriots jersey. Kyle Trask, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones. I don't. Maybe Trey Lance kind of falls down, to the wayside, especially the year that Justin Fields is having. And don't forget, you still have Jamie Newman, a quarterback that opted out. The transfer from Wake Forest to Georgia, he opted out. So it's still a lot of it's a rich quarterback class that's coming out. So I tell you what, the Patriots is definitely going to have the pick of the litter. Definitely not getting Justin Fields into Trevor Lawrence, but they definitely gonna have the pick of litter to get, any other quarterback that their hearts desire.
I hope they show Jamie Newman and Justin Fields in their Georgia jerseys when they get drafted.
Will Kirby Smart be there?
I don't know, but I know he'll be watching his quarterback in the national championship game on Monday. It's gotta be so tough. We'll talk about that on the college episode. All right, Giants 23, Cowboys 19. Just when you think the Giants are dead, they at least made a run for it here. I thought the Cowboys were rolling. They come in and take care of business here, but the Giants step up. We saw that defense, which hasn't been playing awesome in the last month or so, step up. That defense came back, made some plays, and hey, look, they had their shot. The Washington football team went into Philadelphia and had a tough game. Definitely some questionable things at the end of that game for Philly, but hey, Washington was at least on the ropes a little bit at times, and the Giants had a shot at a playoff spot. So the Giants and Cowboys both finished season 6-10 here. I would say it's a disappointment for Dallas. Positive steps. If you're a Giants fan, you got to feel good about the future with Joe Judge. If I'm a Cowboys fan, definitely Mike McCarthy's going to get a break because of Dak Prescott going down. But I was pretty underwhelmed with Mike McCarthy in Dallas this year, even before Dak went down. The offense was cooking, but how much of that is Dak versus Mike McCarthy? Dallas certainly seems to they got some answers that they need to seek out here in the offseason, but the Giants just seem to be on the right track. I like Daniel Jones when he's healthy. This was a competitive team even when they were losing early on. We always talked about their fight every week, and Joe Judge seems like a very bright young coach. I'd be pretty fired up if I were a Giants fan looking in the future.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Nick. If you're a Giants fan, I think you have a lot to lean your hat on. If a healthy Daniel Jones is coming back, you can kind of see him making progressions in the later part of this season. And then, Saquon Barkley, depending on how he comes back from his torn ACL, what he's capable of doing. And then, you got Sterling Shepard, you got Evan Ingram, and then you got Wayne Gallman, who proved that, he can be not only a lead back, but he's definitely be a solid backup. And then what the defense is giving you all year. So I tell you what, I think Joe Judge and this Giants team moving forward can shock a lot of people in the next couple of years if they can kind of keep these pieces together and kind of bring in some veteran talent as well. But if you're a Cowboys fan, oh man, how can you not go out and expect to win this game against a Giants team who's not been playing pretty good? And it really seems like this Cowboys team was hitting its stride, especially with Andy Dalton coming back, from the concussion early in the year, from the COVID and everything. It kind of seemed like they were kind of putting it together, but it was reports out there that, Kellen Moore kind of turned down the Boise State head coaching job to kind of remain an offensive coordinator. I just don't see that last. I just don't see that last. And if me personally, if I was Kellen Moore, I would have took the job because this Cowboys team really seems like it's up in shambles, especially on the offense side of the ball under Mike McCarthy.
But they put up some good numbers early in the season. Dak was playing well. If you remember their comeback against the Falcons earlier in the year, they definitely had some big moments on offense, and they were competitive early in the season too. They were competitive. I would have liked to see this season if Dak doesn't get injured. I think that Dallas easily wins the NFC East this year. So they're easily a playoff team with Dak. But that being said, the contract issues out there for Dak, did they get that done this offseason, or the Cowboys decide to go a different direction?
Yeah, that's probably going to be the talk of the town this whole offseason surrounding the Dallas Cowboys. I think that's going to be, 1A, and then, going to, the defense side of ball, that's going to be probably like 1B. But, getting this Dak contract situated, that's definitely going to be, the talk of the town in Texas, Jerry World and everything surrounding that. But if they can get that contract done and Dak can come back 100% healthy, I like this Cowboys team and all the weapons it has on the offense side of the ball. But I tell you what, the thing that kind of killed the Cowboys this year was definitely on the defense side of the ball. So they kind of have to draft well or bring some guys over in free agency to kind of tighten up that defense side of the ball.
Yeah, defense was pretty rough, but it's almost funny that Dak's going to get paid most likely for not playing versus what he did on the field. You get a preview of life without Dak this year. I think if you're Jerry Jones, got to time to open up that wallet and pay the man. But hopefully Dak comes back and bounces back well next year for the Cowboys. All right, let's move on to the NFC South. The Bucks 44, the Falcons 27. This was a game. This was tight throughout the day, but the Bucks just kept pulling ahead, and then the fourth quarter they buried Atlanta. Shocking, Atlanta had a bad fourth quarter, Rob. Tom Brady goes for 399 yards, 4 touchdowns. Ronald Jones had a solid game, but this real storyline here, he's starting to connect. This Bucks offense is peaking at the right time. You're seeing Chris Godwin catch a couple touchdowns. Mike Evans has been more involved, although he was injured going off the field yesterday. Antonio Brown, 11 receptions, 138 yards for 2 touchdowns. This is what you want to see if you're a Bucks fan. There's been some down moments this season, but they had a nice finish against a favorable schedule. And you got a great first-round matchup with Washington in the playoffs. That's almost as good as a bye in the eyes of many Bucks fans, in my opinion. Got to think we're going to be seeing Tampa Bay play into the divisional round at least.
Yeah, I would think so. And I tell you what, one thing that we talked about, all year was this, Bruce Arians, Tom Brady getting and working on the same page. You really haven't heard any talk about, Bruce Arians and Tom Brady kind of not being on the same page the last couple of weeks. And just like you said, yeah, they had a favorable schedule, but at the end of the day, it really seems like Brady is cranking it up a little bit, knowing the magnitude of the playoffs and knowing the magnitude, like, hey, we have to up our play. And that's what it seems like he's doing. He's elevating the team. And then it seems like Antonio Brown is coming into his own. And, he has a bevel of weapons on the offense side of the ball. even if Mike Evans is not healthy to go, in the particular game this week against Washington. But I tell you what, Tom Brady, he's the GOAT for a reason. 43 years old, throwing for 43 touchdowns on the season. Like it just seems like he's aging like fine wine. I tell you, like Tom Brady. And if this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense can kind of get back to where it was playing early in the year, I think this Tampa Bay team can make a deep run in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Hopefully you avoid the Saints until the NFC Championship game, though. New Orleans seems to have their number for sure. Atlanta, did Raheem Morris do enough to keep the interim job? To remove the interim tag? I say no.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think he kind of, did kind of spice up a little stuff within the locker room and outside of the locker room, and they've been a little bit more competitive. But just like you said, I mean, just like we talked about, is the Detroit Lions. Is it going to be a rebuild for the Atlanta Falcons moving forward? Are we going to see Julio Jones there? Are we going to see Matt Ryan there? So it just seems like, the staples of that Atlanta Falcons team that's been there for the longest might not be there moving forward. So I think, if that's the case, you kind of have to rebuild not only from the head coaching job, but, from the quarterback and, all the other positions that you need. So I think this is going to be a total rebuild for the Atlanta Falcons moving forward.
It'll be interesting to see. You could definitely make that argument. I think unlike Detroit, though, you've seen this group have success in Atlanta. But my big issue is when you look at the division, New Orleans isn't going anywhere. Tampa Bay is not going anywhere in the next couple of years. Do you think this group can get past those two teams? And I'm with you. I think it might be time to pull the trigger and get that rebuild. Why not start now? Because Tampa Bay is going to have to start in a few years. Like they got an older group, they got a veteran group that's going to have to rebuild in a few years. Why not get ahead of Tampa Bay, get ahead of New Orleans on the process? So that's the way I look at it. Green Bay, 35, Chicago 16. The Packers not only are NFC North champs, but the number one seed in the NFC. The Super Bowl goes through Lambeau. A MVP season out of Aaron Rodgers, just continued it yesterday. 4 touchdowns. Man, Devontae Adams, just him and Devontae Adams, their connection is just unbelievable. Love watching those two play week in and week out. Mitch Trubisky had a bit of a resurgence in this season here, but we kind of saw him revert back to his typical self. If you're a Bears fan, where do you go at the quarterback position next season? Does Mitch come back for another run? What do we got to do with Chicago to get the Bears over the hump, Rob?
I think you hit the nail on the head, and we talking about the quarterback position, and I know we saw Mitch Trubisky kind of play well down the stretch, but just like you said, he kind of reverted back to the old Mitch Trubisky. It really seems like, he against the elite competition, he doesn't play up to par, but, for the teams that's kind of evenly matched or, the teams that's a little bit beneath the Bears, he plays outstanding. So it's just more so of the consistent play for Mitch Trubisky. Like, I think he can make all the throws. He's a mobile quarterback. You know what he can do with his feet. But I think it's just the consistency. It's just the progression, the reads that he has to go through. And we haven't seen that against elite competition. And I think that's the thing that we're kind of putting Mitch Trubisky in that Baker Mayfield mode where, we know Baker Mayfield is a capable quarterback, but we just want to see it against elite competition. And Baker Mayfield has proven this year that he can do it against elite competition. And he has the ultimate opportunity to do it against, the Pittsburgh Steelers in prime time in the playoffs. So I tell you what, I think Mitch Trubisky has to make that jump, but he needs people around him. He needs weapons around him. And I just don't think the Chicago Bears team on the offensive side of the ball has enough weapons for Mitch Trubisky. So that's something that they have to work out through the free agency and through the draft moving forward. But I think you say, why not bring him back for another year? But right now you can't see me, Nick, but I'm hitting the discount double check Aaron Rodgers. Give me the belt. Just wrap it up and give him the MVP already. He's having a tremendous season, an amazing season, and I'm pretty sure he wants to cap that off with holding Lombardi Trophy. And he got that home field advantage. Who wants to come into Lambeau and try to play Aaron Rodgers and go up against that team on the frozen tundra?
Yeah, especially when he's getting that Rodgers rate too. That really helps him out. The Bears, I should mention, I was talking about the Bears like they didn't make the playoffs. They are the 7th seed. I'm just not giving them a lot of hope going into New Orleans next weekend. Do you see any way that game turns out competitive?
The only way I could see that game turning out competitive if Alvin Kamara doesn't play. I know he, contracted COVID. They said that he might be back, but we saw the lingering effects for players who had tested positive for COVID coming back. Will Alvin Kamara come back to his 6 touchdown performance, Alvin Kamara, or will he be a little bit, fatigued because of, testing positive for COVID? So I think, that's one thing we have to look at with that matchup. But if he comes back and he's Alvin Kamara, I think this is going to be a rout for the New Orleans Saints, and they move on to the next round. But that's the only way that the Bears can kind of keep this competitive if Alvin Kamara doesn't play, or if he does play and he's not 100%.
I just hope COVID doesn't have a huge impact on the playoffs. That feels dumb to say out loud now that I'm saying it out loud, but I hope we get a really like a true playoff feel. Like I hope we're not missing a starting quarterbacks in the NFC Championship game or something like that. Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady are both out. Like that part of that Cardinals Rams game yesterday, where both the starting quarterbacks are out. The season's on the line. I hope the playoffs don't look like that, but you just made me nervous with the Kamara statement there. All right, let's move on to the AFC West. Two non-playoff teams, I should say. The Raiders get a 32-31 win over the Broncos to cap off their first season in Las Vegas at 8-8. Hey, this was a team that looked like they were going to be in the wild card hunt, and really disastrous last month kept them from it. Didn't finish strong at all. I'm very interested to see this team going forward. I think if you're buying stock in the Raiders, now's a good time to buy it. But I think the Broncos team, this Broncos team showed some signs of life too. Drew Lock definitely lacks consistency, but he does flash and play well every now and then, doesn't he?
Yeah, he really does, and that's the thing. I think just like Drew Lock, he was out early in the year. He was banged up, and he really didn't build that continuity with Melvin Gordon coming over, being on the Denver Broncos for the first time, and building that continuity with those receivers. So I think moving forward, Drew Lock and that offense is going to be okay. And then you already know what the Denver Broncos can do on the defense side of the ball. But I think one of the key players on the defense side is Von Miller. Do the Denver Broncos bring Von Miller back, or do he kind of, move on and kind of, play for a contender where he can kind of actually have a chance to win a Super Bowl? So I think, the Denver Broncos team is going to be, the rebuild is going to be slow rebuild. But I really like what John Gruden is doing with this Raiders team. I think it's a solid foundation. I think Derek Carr is a franchise quarterback. I think, he can lead this Raiders team to the playoffs. You have a franchise running back in Josh Jacobs. You have a big-time weapon in Darren Waller at the tight end position. But I think you can definitely give Derek Carr a little bit more weapons on the outside of the ball and keep building this defense through the draft. So I think this Raiders team is going to be okay moving forward. I just hate the drop-off that they had, because they were playing so competitive early in the year, and then they just kind of, dropped off. I know they were battling injuries, but football is a war of attrition. So it goes to the team who can be the healthiest at the end. And the Las Vegas Raiders wasn't one of those teams, and it showed.
Too bad, because they had some bright spots this season too. So, and football is better when the Raiders are good, and you got Gruden. Hey, Gruden in the playoffs, that would have been fun this year. But hey, you see the 10-6 Dolphins can't make it. The Raiders, you had your shots, you dropped it. Moving on to next season. Hey, one team definitely looking ahead next season, Rob, the Jacksonville Jaguars. They took the field in Indianapolis without Trevor Lawrence for the last time, and Jaguar fans couldn't be happier that this season is over. 1-15 after a 28-14 loss against the Colts. They beat the Colts on opening day and then lost 15 straight down the stretch. Doug Marrone is out in Jacksonville officially today. Shad Khan made that announcement. Now you got to hire a GM. You got to hire a coach. I know there's a lot of crazy rumors floating around about Urban Meyer and Ryan Day and everybody else, but if you're Jacksonville, get that GM in place and then worry about a coach. You got a great situation. You don't need to force it. I guarantee you get some good candidates in there. If you're the Jags, future's looking bright in Jacksonville, but this season was dismal. Indianapolis played close with them. They kind of stuck around, but thankfully they got a guy named Jonathan Taylor on their team, and Taylor ran for 253 yards on 30 carries and 2 touchdowns. Really looked like the back we saw out of Wisconsin on this day. And the Colts will go into Buffalo next week as the 7th seed in the AFC. And hey, look, as much as we like the Bills and we think the Bills can make a run in these playoffs, the Colts are not going to be a pushover. This has been a solid team that was fully capable of winning the division. I mean, really, the Titans needed a last-second field goal against the Texans to steal the division. But this Colts team, I wouldn't want to see them in round 1 of the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, they have all the pieces that they need to kind of, pull off the win against the Buffalo Bills in the, the playoffs. I tell you what, the way that Jonathan Taylor is running the ball down the stretch, I tell you what, that's going to be pretty tough to defend. And especially if Phillip Rivers can limit the turnovers, they have weapons. That defense is really stout. So I'll tell you what, it's definitely going to be a good matchup going against the Bills. But moving forward, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars is so happy that the Jets kind of gave them Trevor Lawrence, and they won that sweepstakes of getting the number 1 pick. So I think the Jacksonville Jaguars and that fan base is going to be happy moving forward with Trevor Lawrence at the helm. But just talking about the Indianapolis Colts, once again, Phillip Rivers, he passed Dan Marino all time, and I think on the 5th, or he's number 5th now, all-time touchdown passes. So he passes Dan Marino. So congrats to Phillip Rivers in that record-breaking game that he had this past against the Jacksonville. So I think it's going to be a tough matchup for the Buffalo Bills. But once again, the Colts can win. It's a winnable game for the Colts. But Phillip Rivers is going to have to play like the Phillip Rivers of, if the Colts want to win.
Yeah, certainly, and that's why you bring a veteran in with this roster. So good season by Indy, 11-5. I don't know if a lot of people had them going 11-5 early on, but good season by Indianapolis. Only good for the 7th seed in the AFC, though. That's a little crazy. Let's go out west. The Chargers defeated the Kansas City Chiefs 38-21. The Chiefs we're starting Chad Henne at quarterback. As a Jaguars fan, I've watched a lot of Chad Henne, and that is not a recipe for victory typically. Justin Herbert finishes a solid rookie season at 7-9. And hey, this Chargers team, they're at one point, we finished with 4 straight victories here. Definitely some optimism heading into the offseason. Let's see what this team can do fully healthy next year. I know there's rumors. They're also a part of the Urban Meyer rumors. But if I'm running the Chargers, I'm giving this group another year. I think they earned it down the stretch here. I liked what I saw. How do you not at least put a lot of stock in what you saw out of Justin Herbert's development if you're analyzing this? And the Chiefs will go into the playoffs as the 1 seed, but I really want to focus on the Chargers because we'll have plenty of time to talk about the Chiefs down the road.
Yeah, I think, this is one of the games that the Chargers – this was a must win for the Chargers. These are the games that you need to win. Of course, the Chiefs didn't play Patrick Mahomes and didn't play a lot of the players, but at the end of the day, Justin Herbert has been consistent this whole season, and he's definitely hands down the unanimous, rookie of the year. I just don't see anyone else competing to get rookie of the year other than Justin Herbert. So go ahead and give him that award. And hats off to Anthony Lynn. I know he's been kind of getting, banged up, the last couple of weeks in regards to his game management, but he was actually the one who said, hey, we're going to go with Justin Herbert. And, it proved right that they didn't go back to Tyrod Taylor. When he got healthy, they said, we're going to stick with Justin Herbert. He's our guy. And it worked out for him. So once again, I think one of the main things moving forward for this Chargers team is if they can stay healthy. You had Derwin James go down. You had, Bosa, Melvin Ingram get nicked up, Austin Eckler. So you have all these pieces who gets banged up and gets nicked up and misses time. So if you can have the continuity and bring everyone back and everyone can be healthy, I think this Chargers team is definitely a playoff team moving forward.
Yeah, definitely they have the bones. It looks like they have the bones to do it. So obviously, though, tough division. We talked about the Raiders and Broncos. This is going to be a very competitive division next year. Maybe one of the strongest in football. Looking forward to seeing how that plays out next year. But as long as the Chiefs are in town, as long as the Chiefs are going at the rate they're going at, you're pretty much playing for second in that division. Let's go out west. Teams playing for wild card spots. The Cardinals and the Rams. Two star-studded offense. We think of both these teams as offensive teams, although the Rams been playing great defense this year too. But Arizona comes in with the huge advantage of Jared Goff being on the bench and a fella by the name of John Wolford starting for LA. Kyler Murray gets hurt though early in the game, aggravates, I believe, an ankle injury. It was. So here's what I want to know, Rob. This ends up being a defensive battle. The Rams win 18-7, setting the Cardinals packing for the season, and they clinched a playoff spot. They clinched the 6th seed in the NFC, and that earns them a date in Seattle next week. That game is going to be played on Saturday at 4:40 p.m. That should be one of the better playoff games. Hopefully, the Rams are fully healthy because they played the Seahawks tough this year. But I want to know from you, where did Arizona quarterback Chris Streveler go to college?
I have no clue.
You didn't know he went to South Dakota?
I had no clue he went to South
Oh,
Dakota.
man. Okay. All right. Where did John Wolford go to college?
Once again, no clue on that. You're stumping me on all these quarterbacks right
Wake
now.
Wake Forest. And are either one of these quarterbacks 6'2"?
Once again, Nick, you're
No.
stumping me on all this quarterback talk.
No, 6'1" for both of these guys. So both 6'1". We have 6'1" South Dakota quarterback going up against a 6'1" Wake Forest quarterback to decide whether or not the Cardinals or Rams were going to be going to the playoffs. And normally we should be watching Kyler Murray and Jared Goff. It shows how difficult it is to find top level quarterbacks because if that's your backup option, holy crap, maybe you guys should invest a draft pick in a backup quarterback this year. Both of these teams.
Yeah, you would definitely think so. And it kind of seems like they have the pieces that they need. But once again, if you don't have that quarterback play, it's going to be hard to win in this league. And we're going to talk about that later on when we talk about the Eagles in the Washington game. But I want to hold off on that talk. But just like you said, you definitely need to invest in a solid backup or through the draft, or just bring over a savvy veteran, kind of like that Ryan Fitzpatrick, where he can come in and kind of, close the game if your quarterback is not playing well. So we've kind of seen that work with the Miami Dolphins this year. So I think more teams need to adopt that a little bit more.
Yeah, you got to think. I mean, even look at San Francisco. We'll get into them. I mean, let's actually move over to that game here while we're on the topic here. But the Rams get the win. They get the playoff spot. But Seattle defeats San Francisco 26-23. But what are we on? Are we on the third quarterback for the 49ers this year with CJ Beathard? I mean, they've been playing some good ball regardless of who's in. And I know the offense hasn't been potent, but they've at least been. I mean, it's not like what we watched with LA and Arizona yesterday where the offenses just weren't moving. The 49ers have had a pulse this year at least, and they push a lot of teams down to the wire. This game was interesting with Seattle though, because it was 6-3 at halftime, and San Francisco was up 9-6 heading into the fourth, and then both teams exploded for 34 combined points in the fourth quarter. Russell Wilson, of course, saves the best for last. Tyler Lockett, 2 touchdown catches on 90 yards receiving, 12 receptions. CJ Beathard, respectable day. Hey, look, the 49ers, I've been calling it since midseason. You just lost too many pieces to be competitive this year. Nothing to hang your head about with the 6-10 record. Come back next year, one of the bounce back candidates of the year next year.
Yeah, I tell you what, just like you said, the San Francisco 49ers are on their third quarterback right now in CJ Beathard. But once again, he's been proven. He's not like these other quarterbacks where, he's just, they're throwing in him where he's cold. Like CJ Beathard has came in relief effort and actually put good games together before. So I think that's the difference. And that's what we were talking about in regards to, the backup quarterbacks for the Cardinals and the Rams. So, but I tell you what, if you don't have a backup quarterback that can kind of come in, you're definitely going to have to lean on the running game. And I tell you what, the San Francisco 49ers running game is, A1. I tell you what, Jeff Wilson Jr. had another good day, solid day performance. So I tell you what, if you can't draft a backup quarterback or you can't bring over a savvy veteran, I tell you what, one thing that you have to do is shore up that running game. So that goes for all the teams out there.
Well, and there's another quarterback just like Dak that may have benefited from not playing this year, Jimmy G. I know there's a lot of talk earlier in the year about Garoppolo. Oh, is he really the answer in San Francisco? They got to bring someone in. Well, look how that team functions with Garoppolo and without Garoppolo. He may not be spectacular. He may not be the Drew Brees, the Aaron Rodgers type of character, but he fits what they do, and he can get the job done for that team. I think you got to run it back with Garoppolo if you're San Francisco, Rob.
You have to. I mean, you pretty much gave him so much money. I think, if you invested so much money in Garoppolo, so if that's your guy, then you kind of have to bring him back, and you kind of have to run it back again, especially with everyone's healthy, especially on the offense side of the ball and the defense side of the ball. I think you give Jimmy G one more year, you run it back with him. But at the end of the day, don't feel like you can't draft a quarterback in the late rounds or to kind of shore up that quarterback room and kind of put pressure on Jimmy G to play his best. So I think that's one thing that the 49ers have to do moving forward. But at the end of the day, I think Jimmy G can say, hey, I was not on the team. I was injured. I sat away, and I can actually watch the game from the sideline. And these are the improvements that I need to make, and these are the improvements that the team needs to make moving forward. So I think, running it back with Jimmy G is going to be okay for the San Francisco 49ers, definitely when they can get all those pieces back on the defense side of the ball.
The number 2 seed New Orleans Saints, after being tied 7-7 in the first quarter with Carolina, rip off 26 consecutive points to get a 33-7 victory over the Panthers. New Orleans goes into the playoffs fairly hot. They definitely they dropped a couple games here in the last month, but they've been dealing with injury issues and they haven't been at full strength in a while. It'll be nice to see them get Kamara back. Like you said, hopefully he gets back for the playoffs next week. But who knows what his actual recovery time is going to be. Luckily, it seems like Ty Montgomery stepped in and filled in the void a little bit there for Kamara with 105 yards rushing yesterday. This Panthers team, better than we expected overall. We saw Teddy Bridgewater play well at times, definitely a guy deals with injuries. He gets nicked up a lot, I'll tell you that. PJ Walker came into this game at one point. If you're Carolina, you got some nice building blocks. There's certainly a ways to go, though. I think you're another season or two away if you're Carolina. But the Panthers are missing CMC all year, so it'd be nice to get McCaffrey back next year. The defense needs to improve a bit because this offense, you can't count on the offense being this offense is not explosive enough to carry this team. So you'd like to see some more focus on the defense in the offseason. Little more bring in another weapon or two on the offensive side of the ball, and this Panthers team could definitely flip it around and at least be a wild card team next year, I think.
Yeah, I think they really could. Just like you said, Teddy B's kind of been banged up all year long, and Christian McCaffrey was hurt all year long. But with those injuries, the Panthers still were competitive, and I think they're going to continue to be competitive, continue to kind of get better through the draft and through free agency. So I think this Panthers team can definitely be, one of those wild card teams moving into next year, because it's not like they have to totally rebuild like some other teams in the NFC or the AFC for that matter.
All right, let's go over the NFC, the game that decided the AFC South, and this was quite the finish in Houston. The Titans get a 41-38 win over the Texans. Deshaun Watson, hey, he was the one bright spot for this Houston team all year. He's He's what makes everything go around there. There needs to be some revamping in Houston overall, but you got your quarterback in place, and you could have a quick rebuild situation in Houston with a guy like Deshaun Watson around. Tannehill did not play his best game yesterday, but he got the job done when he needed to. When they needed two clutch drives, the final moments of the game, Tannehill got it done. Derrick Henry, 34 carries, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns. But best play of the game, outside, of course, the field goal that won it, that hit the crossbar, not the crossbar, the right upright, and went over, just cleared the crossbar. That was a great way to finish the game. But A.J. Brown comes up with a clutch reception here in the final seconds of the game. Pretty much just burned his guy. It was that simple. He just outran the defender to the ball, and he just made it look so easy. It didn't even look like it was challenging, Rob.
Yeah, he really did. And I tell you what, A.J. Brown is one of these young receivers that's actually coming into his own, and he's going to be around for a long, long time. It just seems like, he's a physical guy, but he can also run. So just like you said, he kind of burned the defender, and he made a great catch. But Ryan Tannehill made a great throw in the clutch moments of that particular game as well. So you take your hats off to Ryan Tannehill and A.J. Brown. But we know this team runs as much as Derrick Henry goes. So it's King Henry and everything else. You take your hats off for Derrick Henry for rushing over 2,000 yards. Only 8 players in the history of the game that actually has that record set. So good job for Derrick Henry and the Tennessee Titans moving on to go deep in the playoffs.
I think that stat is extra amazing when you consider the backfield by committee approach the NFL is taking to the running back position these days.
Yeah. And I tell you what, and just think about it. It's not like, I mean, granted, he's a big bruising type back, and he does have speed to kind of take it the distance. But, he's not one of those scat backs who's busting off 80, 90-yard runs like every other game. Yeah, he has the capability of doing it, but he's getting a lot of those yards, bruising through the tackles, and he's taking a pound in it while he's doing it. So I think that's just more impressive. It goes to show you the player that Derrick Henry is. And yeah, he definitely should get some MVP consideration. But once again, the way that Aaron Rodgers is playing, I think it's just Aaron Rodgers' award, and you have to give it to him, especially leading the Packers to the number 1 seed in the NFC.
Derrick Henry, 2,027 yards. The next closest is Dalvin Cook at 1,557. The next closest after that, Jonathan Taylor, 11,169 or 1169. So 1,169 yards for Jonathan Taylor's third place in the NFL. So he almost doubled the third place guy in the NFL. I mean, that's just absolutely astounding what Derrick Henry's doing. Also, 378 carries he had. Derrick Henry this year, 378 carries, nearly 400 carries. Next closest guy, Dalvin Cook at 312. Josh Jacobs at 273 after that. Unbelievable output by Henry in Tennessee. So good thing
he's so durable. And he's so durable. I mean, he's not like the Josh Jacobs and Dalvin Cook who gets nicked up and banged up, or he doesn't have the fumbling issues that Jonathan Taylor was suffering from early in the year. Of course, yeah, Dalvin Henry did put it on the turf yesterday, but once again, you just don't see that. And everyone in the stands, everyone that's watching the game know he's getting the ball, and you still can't stop this guy. So I think that's just a testament to the player Derrick Henry is, and a testament to that offensive line and that team on the offense standpoint. And Ryan Tannehill can definitely run play action off that. And this team can really go deep in the playoffs, if you ask me, on the shoulders of Derrick Henry.
Another Ravens rematch. Should be fun. Washington gets a 20-14 win over Philadelphia on Sunday Night Football to clinch the NFC East. The winner of the NFC East finishes with a 7-9 record, which, quite honestly, Rob, is better than what most of us thought it was going to be by around midseason. Jalen Hurts only ends up completing 7 passes for the Eagles for 72 yards. Rough night for the rookie out of Oklahoma and Alabama there. Alex Smith, though, just steady Eddie, gets the job done. Nothing fancy. Congratulations on your division title, Washington. Certainly not many people picked Washington to win the NFC East this year. It's been a crazy year. I mean, even the dysfunctional nature of the organization, capped with a name change thing, on top of Ron Rivera's cancer treatment, and you end up relying on a guy who almost lost his leg to get you into the playoffs. Outstanding story out of Washington this year. Definitely will be rooting for this team in the playoffs, but you're going up against Tom Brady and the Buccos in the first round. I think it's going to be a quick exit for Washington.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I know, this is NFL, so you don't play for moral victories and you don't play for a good storyline. But who has one of the best storylines this year? It has to be the Washington football team, just like you mentioned, Nick, with the name change, with everything that's happening outside of the field with Daniel Snyder and everything that's going on surrounding that. And then you, just like you mentioned, Ron Rivera and his cancer scare and him just going treatment. Alex Smith at the quarterback position. Chase Young, who's coming into his own, being a dominant force. And then, all of that narrative that you have surrounding this team, it's so good for them to kind of come out this division and actually clinch a playoff spot. So good job for this Washington football team. And hopefully we can kind of get another name change moving forward. So, but kudos to them and them to Alex Smith for his team. For being feisty and for being competitive this year. So I'm so proud and happy for that particular franchise and that team and that fan base.
I know Giants Twitter wasn't happy with some of the decisions made by Doug Peterson last night. What did you think of the Eagles going for it on 4th and goal from the 5 instead of tying it up at 17? What did you think about the decision to go for it?
Before we get in that decision, how about the decision of benching, Jalen Hurts?
That was coming next.
Nate Sudfeld.
Yeah,
I mean,
was coming next.
We talked about we talked about this a little bit earlier with kind of how Brian Flores was handling the Tua Ryan Fitzpatrick situation. But at the end of the day, you are bringing in Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think everyone out there can agree that Ryan Fitzpatrick is a superior quarterback than Nate Sudfeld. And I'll tell you what, do you know where Nate Sudfeld played his college ball at, Nick?
Indiana.
I didn't know that. So that goes to show you that, I can see if you bench Jalen Hurts and you bring in Carson Wentz. That's one thing. But you bring in Nate Sudfeld and Doug Peterson follow-up questions that in the post-game interview was like, oh, well, we played to win. This guy's been here for 4 years. He deserved the opportunity. Okay. Not at that particular junction of the game, because at the end of the day, you could have played him early in the year and to see what he's capable of doing. Why would you bring him in that particular time of the game?
Because he didn't deserve it early in the year, Rob. Pay attention.
Yeah, I don't know. It just really seemed like, Doug Peterson just kind of, tanked away that game to kind of, get kicked out of being the Eagles coach moving forward. That was kind of
what a theory.
Yeah, that just seems like it was unexcusable. I don't understand that logic. If you ask me, I know Jalen Hurts wasn't having the best game of the day, but he did reach pay dirt a couple of times. So I just didn't understand that. Maybe you can figure it out for me, Nick.
I'm not jealous of the situation the Eagles have in front of them this offseason. Like, it's one thing to choose like Tom Brady over Drew Bledsoe in New England, right? There's a kid that led you to the Super Bowl. Like, you're choosing, like, do we want like which type of steak do you want? Like, steak's still good. Like, you could get, like, it's high level stuff. You're choosing between, do you want B to B minus Carson Wentz, maybe C plus Carson Wentz, to B minus to C plus Jalen Hurts as your quarterback? The real answer is you probably should bring both back, but then you're probably going to get into more stuff like this year where it's like a lot of back and forth on the roster, who's playing good, who's not. Like, I don't think Jalen Hurts showed enough to be the starter. Well, I know everyone loves Jalen Hurts, and like He seems like a great guy. All the interviews and stuff. He's football junkie. Like he's going to have a long career in the NFL, but it's only year 2 for the guy. If you're the Eagles, unless you could get like if you could squeeze some team like the Colts, like for Frank Reich wants Carson Wentz and will pay a high price for him. If you could squeeze them and get him to take that contract on, hey, by all means trade Carson Wentz. But I don't think there's enough there with Jalen Hurts just to automatically say he's got the job next year.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think this is a job that, you know, going into next year is definitely going to be won in training camp. I don't think, you know, Jalen Hurts came in and did enough to say, hey, I am the starting quarterback. I mean, it was a different change. It was a great change of pace with Jalen Hurts just because, you know, of the style of play that he can run with Jalen Hurts being the quarterback. But I'm right there with you. I don't think he did enough to solidify I am the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles moving forward. But once again, I tell you what, Nate Sudfeld is definitely not in the mix to be the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles as well. So you're gonna have to do something with that. But once again, just getting back onto this decision of benching Jalen Hurts, I had never seen anything like that before.
Yeah, it was definitely weird, but hey, Washington's not complaining. And you know what, Giants, you're 6-10. Chill out. We don't need to hear the whining that much. You're 6-10. You had chances to win games this year. All right, let's move on here. Let's just recap the wild card weekend coming up. You got the Saints and the Bears. The Rams are traveling to Seattle, and the Bucks are traveling to Washington in the NFC. The Colts go to the Bills. The Browns go to the Steelers, and the Ravens go to the Titans in the AFC. I am a huge fan. Like I didn't think I was crazy about only the one seeds getting the bye week. So you got Green Bay and Kansas City getting bye weeks. I didn't think I was crazy about that at first. I'm liking it better though, because look at this wild card weekend, man. This is beefy.
Yeah, it's definitely going to turn out to be a great wild card weekend with some good matchups. I mean, I think a lot of these matchups could go either way. So it's a coin flip. I just don't see a lot of these matchups being a blowout. I think we're going to have a competitive football all weekend long. And I'm okay with, you know, the top seed from the NFC and the top seed from the AFC getting rewarded with the bye, and no one else is getting rewarded as well. So I really do like that as well too, Nick.
Yeah, even the ones that look like blowouts on paper. I mean, the Bears and Saints, the Bears could show up and play some good defense, get a couple turnovers. Washington football team in Tampa, we've seen Tampa lay an egg here and there. If they're not showing up with their best stuff and Washington, comes out and plays some good defense, hey, I mean, there's really no guarantees. I almost think the safest bet on paper looks to be, I know they're only 3.5 point favorites, but I would be stunned if the Browns went into Pittsburgh and won next weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, once again, I know the Browns kind of, you know, turned the corner and they actually made the playoffs this particular year. But once again, they're still the Browns. You know, it's a good story that they're in the playoffs, good for their organization, good for their fan base. But once again, the Browns beating the Steelers in the playoffs in Pittsburgh, then that I will be on board. I will be on the bandwagon moving forward. Like, hey, this is the Cleveland Browns team. This is a new era moving forward, and they can be consistent year in and year out. But until that is done, I'm definitely rolling with the Pittsburgh Steelers in this one.
They made the playoffs. You got to give them credit. Give them some credit.
But at the end of the day,
Browns.
It's the NFL. Where do we draw the line of, you know, kind of giving handshakes and giving awards to making the playoffs?
It's the Browns. You got to give the Browns credit for making the playoffs.
I totally understand that, but once again, you're in the playoffs. What are you going to do? Are you going to lay an egg, or are you going to bow up, or are you going to be competitive? Like, what Browns team is going to come out? That's one thing that I'm going to be looking at.
Yeah, you definitely want to see them compete. You don't want to see a total blowout. I'm with you on that. All right, well, that sums up Week 17 of the NFL. We had a blast covering the NFL this season, but I do have a quick announcement I want to share with our listeners. Rob and I got together. We planned out what's going on for 2021. And as much as we love NFL football, we want to be able to go deeper on different topics. And in order to do that, we are going to be transitioning American Football Stories into a college football centric podcast. We will finish the NFL season out for our listeners. We'll be covering the playoffs. And who's to say, it's not that we won't ever talk NFL football on here anymore. Like I don't see a reason why we can't talk about the playoffs next year, but we want to focus on deeper topics, and we want to be able to maybe carve out more of a niche. And right now we're covering we're more surface level than we want to be on some topics. So it's fun watching the NFL. We are huge NFL fans, and it's easy to talk about for us, but we'd like to be able to provide a little more expertise and a little more storytelling, a little more depth for our listeners than what we're doing with the NFL right now. Rob, you got any thoughts on that you want to share?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. Just like you said, we kind of want to dive deeper into, the collegiate game. Also, all the NFL draft. We're going to be big NFL draft guys, and all training camp guys. So I think we are dialing back on the NFL a little bit, but everything kind of ties in together. So we're definitely going to be putting out some NFL content moving forward, but definitely more of collegiate college football pod going forward.
Yeah. Not we don't want to say exclusive because we will be covering the NFL draft, but probably more from a college prospect perspective, right? Like, so we're still hammering that out, but just wanted to give our listeners heads up as we wrap up the NFL season. But part of me is going to miss it. I love covering the NFL. I love talking about the NFL, but man, it's so much to cover all of college football and the NFL. And we're definitely looking forward to diving deeper on the collegiate side of things. That's all we got for you today. Looking forward to getting into the playoffs next week. Wildcard weekend looks fantastic. We'll be out with an episode this week. Probably actually talking to our friend Justice Gordon about the New York Jets. We're looking to get him on the podcast here, talking about that. And we appreciate you listening to the show. Thank you. Have a great day. And we'll send it out with a word from our sponsor. American Football Stories is brought to you by Coach Paint. Coach Paint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips similar to the graphics you see on TV. Coach Paint offers the ability to clearly tell a straight video while increasing retention of information in a shorter amount of time. Up your game with Coach Paint today.
Thank you for listening to American Football Stories podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, American Football Stories. We are working to grow our network on YouTube and we'd love to have you subscribe. You can find us also on Apple Podcasts, on Twitter, at American FB Story, and on our website, AmericanFootballStories.com. I am Robert Parker. My co-host is Nick Knudsen. This has been another episode of American Football Stories.